Okay, what are we talking about?
So they saw my schedule in there. I'll leave the 16th. That puts me at a 6 p.m. flight getting into Eugene at about 1 o'clock in the morning. So I've moved us back a day.
So you're flying into Eugene or
No,
flying into Portland?
Renting a big set of wheels. Me and Lana rolling to Eugene late.
Okay, so Lily's going.
Yeah, Lily's going. And instead of leaving the 17th, because prelims the 19th, leave the 16th, get the full day, 2 days of rest before the trials. Generally, I only go one full day before. I'd get there, and then I'd have 1 full day of rest before the competition. But just because it's the trials and you have to mark every box and make everybody happy, you go 2 days.
Okay.
So the 19th and the 21st, and provided everything goes well, I stay an extra day, and I will come home the 23rd.
Okay.
But I do have a swing of 4, maybe 5 meets set up in July. I didn't tell you about all of those. It would be Oslo, Stockholm, which is awesome that they're going to have those in July rather than in late May or early June because the weather's going to be much better.
Yeah.
And then Sotteville in France, maybe one in Poland, and then...
Are you going to go straight?
No, I would come home for a week.
Okay.
Because you remember that a lot of time after the last trials, what was our first meeting after the 2016 trials? Because we left soon after. We were gone like 16 days, and then we stayed home for 3 weeks. But there was a bigger gap between the trials and the Olympics then.
Right.
It seemed like the trials final was Independence Day last time.
It was. Once in a while.
We went to London, didn't we?
Yeah.
Oh, that's when you told me that, Sam, you're not going to make it. No, that was in 2015.
No, that was the Olympic year.
Really?
Because I told you, do you want to go to the Olympics or do you want to break your leg here?
Oh, I don't remember being that.
That's what I said.
Well, Brno was the meet record holder there, but it seemed like the stadium was a little bit different than it was now.
Well, you were struggling, and you did jump 583. You had second locked up, and he was lights out. Being Renault, he was going to win no matter what you did.
Yeah.
And the next bar was, I think, a 90 bar.
At 90, he made it.
And he made it, and you're like, how am I going to make it? And I said, you're not. It's not your day. You're second. Yeah. And you got to deal with me, and how,
Well, yeah.
But
once
I told you, I said, do you want to break your leg here, or do you want to go to the Olympics in 3 weeks? And you said,
you do have a way of saying things.
well, your mother says she's the feather and I'm the hammer. So you shook the dude's hand and you went to the Olympics and got a medal.
Well, I think that started a trend for us where how much is enough. I remember you saying to me at the World Championships in 2017 when I won and it was finished and there was one more attempt and it was against Renault, so it was kind of a flip of that meet we had in London. I just remember it pinging in my brain because I had one attempt left and I said, should I jump at this bar? And you asked me what would make it any better. And that really spoke to me a long time ago because if you jump high but you've won and you end on a miss, what would have made it any better? Does jumping higher make it any better?
No, I couldn't. Yeah, that's one thing that I learned a long time ago is if you achieve a victory that you could not conceive of years before, why go further than that amazing feeling when it really won't make any difference?
I was doing an interview with a Dutch guy the other day, and he couldn't get it when I was trying to explain to him. He says, tell me about how complicated and hard the pole vaulting event is. And I said, well, I try to make it none of that. I try to make it a simple event so that it can just be simple and we can just be jumpers. But with the poles and the runs, I said, if I'm good enough, all of that shouldn't matter to you. It should just be a competition of who can jump the highest and who wins. And the height never comes into the conversation until it means something, like a record. And, Dmitry Markov had the championship record at 6:05, and I certainly wasn't going to jump 6:05 that day. So all into one moment, jumping at 6:01 again in London in front of a big crowd. It was a very addicting feeling jumping in front of that big crowd, which is probably why I felt like asking that question. I don't know if anybody in this world, in any sport, can really have exactly 55,000 people looking at you, and then in unison for you. It's a hard thing to describe how.
Well,
it's a feeling.
I can
it's a
see,
feeling, and it can leave you hollow afterwards.
No, I can see. I mean, that was. We really couldn't conceive until that year, 2017, when the year started. Remember, I said to you, I think you can win the world championship this year.
You did.
I said that in January, and we started working towards that. And then once you had achieved that goal, and the feeling that you felt, and I know that I felt at the time, could not improve upon that. Now, the only exception to that is, and you've seen Renault do it a number of times, is they treat the crowd to a real show by him putting it at the world record and taking 3 events at the world record, okay? So you win the big championship and then you put it on a world record, okay, I can see that. But we were just never about that.
Well, that's kind of his shtick, you know.
know.
People think I'm bragging a lot when I say it's not really my destiny to jump the world record. But I think I say it so that I can appreciate our own accomplishments, which are many, and they're rife with just awesome and import. But if you let everybody tell you that it's only a matter of what the number next to the stat of the place is, then you're missing half of the acclaim of winning a big victory and being thankful for it.
Half of the thing that we know about ourselves, probably that other people don't know, is we're just kind of normal country people, and certain achievements mean a lot to us, and we just don't dance to everybody else's tune. You know, everybody else might think that we ought to do this, but we don't necessarily think we ought to do that. We never have. And so, like winning a world championship and not taking the next jump, which you've done 2 times.
Yeah.
You did it in Doha as well. You didn't take the last jump in Doha either.
Well, I just hope it doesn't come across as arrogance.
No, it's not. What I think it comes across is I won, and I'm going to go appreciate my fellow competitors here instead of everyone point the spotlights and the cameras at me.
Yeah.
No, let's point the cameras at us.
Yeah, I don't think a picture like that would have been taken if I then said, okay, everybody else go stand on the sideline while I have another jump. We're finished.
Well, like at Doha, and you came over and you said, should I take the next jump? And I said, no.
No, I didn't even ask in Doha.
Anyway, the 3 of you going to sit on the pit together was one of the best moments of Doha. And like you said, if you pull the spotlight and the cameras to you for 20 minutes, you kind of negate those great competitors who are your friends. Mm-hmm. And so celebrating with your friends there at the end of, and any one of the 3 of you could have won it. And you guys all know that. You all appreciate that fact.
I think that's a hard thing for most people to entertain, is when you've been jumping with these guys all year. I mean, in 2019, Mondo beat me in Stockholm. I remember you saying, he beat you at your own game, Sam. I'm like, well, you know, he jumped the bar that I usually use as my ace in the hole to beat a lot of people, but he did a good job that day, and he was in front of the home crowd. That was in Stockholm. Then I go to Monaco.
And I wasn't there.
No, you weren't there. But we went to Lausanne, and then Piotr jumps that 6-meter jump on a 4th attempt. It was an amazing jump, but I had my shoes off, and so you're like, whoa, what the heck? Everybody has the ability to jump well, and then he backs it up with that 6.02 in Monaco. But by the time we got to Doha, it just seemed rather moot to try to jump higher, because we had already jumped that 6.06 bar that year.
Exactly.
It was an easy decision to make, to say, let's revel in our victory. And that takes a long time in sport to kind of get to that point where you can, and I was telling them about this yesterday, where you can actually understand what moment you're in while you're in it.
Well, you remember, even in high school, when you jumped 17 feet, nobody in this state had ever jumped higher as a high school kid, and we stopped. Yeah. And we stopped and we left the bar up there.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
We could have really appreciated it. That bar stayed up there for the entire track meet. Yeah. And every time we walked by or something, we could look up and that bar was still up there. We appreciated for ourselves that moment. Mm-hmm. We really appreciated that thing. And then the same thing, every victory or NCAA championship or whatever, we appreciated that moment for what it was. And we didn't try to make it more so, and didn't try to. You've never pulled that unless they made you. Some meets make you try to jump higher. But if you had the choice, you've just said, it's a victory, amazing competition with my friends.
I think that's a good way to sum up the effect with an A that being from a place we're from has on you at far-flung places, and that chasing grandiose is gonna eventually cause you to be unhappy or be unthankful or push other people away.
Well, you look at this too. You go all the way to the ends of the earth sometimes to compete, and who are your buddies?
That's the only guys I know over there.
These guys, and y'all like each other, and you eat your meals together, and you give each other crap all the time, and they're your buddies. So you don't want to upstage them, even though you won this time. You guys all appreciate. Like we were eating at Zurich one time, and I think I can't remember who it was. I want to throw out a name. Looked around the table and said, "Who's going to win?" And everybody at the table could have won. Yeah. Every one of the 5 guys at that table could have won, and they all knew it. It just depends on the day. Yeah. But you're all friends, and you're all eating together. So it might have started out a fun little argument between the guys or whatever. But my point was, and I think I even said that, I go, well, it just depends on the day, because all these guys can win.
It's always fun to have your coach be the one that said, no, my guy's not necessarily going to win. I think that was makes you different than most other coaches. Most other coaches would bite their tongue rather than say, my guy has a chance to lose, even if he's the best guy. And I do have a lot of respect for you for that.
Well, we've always, for example, and this goes back to when you were starting out. I mean, when you were starting out, everybody beat you. You didn't win one probably till you were a junior in high school, and you didn't really start winning them until your second year in the NCAAs. You started winning a percentage of those meets, but all during that time, all those coaches and those athletes, they were our friends, and they shared information with us, and they helped us. Shoot, some of them even loaned us poles, and so you don't throw it in the face of your buddies when you perchance beat them. Yeah. You're like, wow, we won it today. Yeah. It was our turn. It's kind of like pro sports, for example. I've used this metaphor a lot. How many guys play for a football? Hundreds. How many win a Super Bowl ring? Few. Does it make you not a great football player if you never won a Super Bowl ring? No, you get to do what you love. You get to do what you love. You get to do it with your friends, and hopefully you get to do it for a long time. And so we've always had kind of a different view of it. There's never been a huge amount of money in pole vault anyway.
Not enough to not make
Not
friends.
enough to become a jerk. You know what I'm saying?
True.
Not enough to become a jerk over. So, have fun with your friends and travel the world. Remember that story I used to tell you about the train? The Hogwarts train making the big circle? Yeah. And so
it was an apt analogy.
Well, I tried to put that in your head because, it is a long journey. It's a long journey. You're probably 2/3 around that circle now. But at that time, we're way over here. And I said, you know what? You're here today. But guess what? There's a train stop here in Zurich, and there's another one in Rome, and there's another one here, and you get to be on the train. So there's not a lot of pressure today. Let's get out there, have some fun, and do what you love to do,
Well, when in my career has it gotten serious? When's it serious? When's it nut cutting time?
I have to say that it never. I would say that the pivotal point was the 2016 Olympic trials. You had a big day that day, and that was really important career-wise, and I really, really wanted you to do well. And my goodness, we prepared for that. Mm-hmm. We prepared for that better than, I don't know, anybody I've ever heard of preparing for the trials pole vault. We dotted every I and we crossed every T, and we took everything into consideration that probably could, and you were trained and you were ready and all that. That was really, really important. But once that hurdle was crossed, making that Olympic team was always something that we just thought, please let us do that.
Well, it was the the vehicle by which we started this whole thing out. In 2013, when I jumped that 19-foot bar.
Is that you?
Flood
you.
advisory.
That's you on your flippy phone.
That's my flip phone. All right.
We're not gonna get flooded out on this hill, but Papa K's pasture may catch some water.
But
Well, I remember in 2014, if I had known that was going to be my last year as a collegiate, it would have then changed the way I thought about a lot of things. But it kind of caught us by surprise, in that our lives needed to change in that moment, and I think that brought us together. Very much so, leaving Ole Miss.
I think so. Coming out early. It's just something
tough, man.
It's something that we needed to do, and it was.
I'm so glad we did it now. I'm so glad we did it.
Well,
now.
I remember. I knew it was going to be a hard sell.
Yeah.
It was going to be a really hard sell, but I felt like in my heart, we needed the 2 years before the Olympics in order for you to get to the Olympics and get a medal. Yeah. And we just felt like it was within our grasp if we traveled enough and competed at a high enough level, because you weren't gonna get prepared staying in the NCAA, jumping at all of these meets. Mm-hmm. The competition level at a Diamond League meet is so much keener than even like an SEC conference meet or something like that. But I don't know if you remember at the Olympics, we're behind the track in the warm-up area, and all the cool athletes are back there, and I looked around at everybody, and everybody was so nervous. Yeah, and I said to you, there are 12 guys here. 9 of them are going to leave very, very unhappy. Do not be one of those, because we are at the Olympics, and we never thought we'd be at the Olympics. This is crazy. And you went out, and
it didn't quite feel like an Olympics. I remember that it rained, stuff broke. It did all the right things to take pressure off, which was pretty cool.
Well, the other thing was, having competed at Diamond League meets for 2 years allowed you to see great competition.
Well, you're not competing against monsters anymore.
Well, you take a collegiate kid and put him in the Olympics, and he's surrounded by legends. It's like, how do you fight? How do you fight with these guys? You can't. So that's why we had to leave Ole Miss early, and that's why we had to get out and take our lumps. We even talked about that. We're going to have to take our lumps around the world so that we can actually compete at Rio.
Yeah.
And but I did tell you, I said, now go out there and have some joy and enjoy what you're going to do. And that's one thing that kind of shone through. You weren't nervous because you were out there with your friends and you were having a good time. And no matter what the outcome was, if you were first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, it was going to be one of these life-changing highlights. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter what the outcome was.
Everything was up,
There was no downside to that Olympic final. There was no downside at all for us, because here we are from Oxford, Mississippi, training at a little high school from 7th grade all the way up to the Olympics. That's a crazy, stupid story that nobody would even believe. Yeah. So we're at the Olympics, and there is no downside. There's no downside. And so building on that, going around the world, is like, there ain't no downside to this. All we got to do is jump like we do in practice and have fun.
It's a hard thing to continue to hold on to that mindset. It's something strong, especially for doing things repeatedly. I was telling them yesterday, you're only as good as your last event is one of the first tenets of track and field professionally. You're only as good as your last one. And there's truth to that, and if you can break away from that truth, then you can be freed a little bit.
Well, I think one of the, it's such a mental sport that you travel around all the time, and you're asked the same questions all the time, and you're constantly trying to find a slightly different, interesting way to answer that same question. And we don't even think of those things. You're answering questions that you don't even think about. Mm-hmm. The concepts that don't even concern you. Like, when are you going to jump the world record? They ask you and you go, all right, that's for Mondo and Renault. That's not my thing. And they can't conceive of that, but that's just not our thing.
Well, and flipping the script, you used to tell me after about 2013, our practices changed from, okay, how can we pole vault better, to how can we think better? And even now, I love doing what we do because it's not so confusing anymore. It's not so confusing. And when you're first starting out and you're learning and you're just got a blank book in front of you and you're supposed to write write the script of how you're going to do it. Pole vaulting is a daunting endeavor, but when you've mastered your mold and it works and it's successful and people respect it, and no one's ever doubted me in my whole life, even from when I was a tyke. They said, "Oh wow, he's a good coach's kid. He's got potential." But now I get to sit back and I say, "Well, I get to look at it with a much more broad view."
Well, did you ever think? We never thought you would ever jump 19 feet in 96 or 97 competitions. That's something that never entered our mind, but it has happened. And just being able to travel and do what you do. I use this metaphor so many times when I talked about you, especially in the Renault days. Remember, I say we're still in the Renault days, but there was a time where nobody could beat Renault. For 5 years, he ran the table, and Paul got kind of boring. But we knew when we went up against Renault, we're probably going to take a beating. But I said, you know what? Sam is kind of the German Shepherd of the pole vault. German Shepherds, we love them. The German Shepherd is not the best dog for anything, but it's the second best dog for everything. And I said, Sam is the German Shepherd of the pole vault world. I said, Renault he is the prize dog at the National Kennel Club. We're the German Shepherd, and we're going to be second best everywhere we go. And occasionally, you know what?
Yeah, it's hard to be.
Occasionally, when the moment comes, you're going to be able to go from here to here. If you stay at that level, all of a sudden you have that beautiful day. And I remember the first time you won a Diamond League meet in Shanghai.
Well, I remember
that was incredible.
Yeah, it was also we backed it over that World Challenge win in Beijing. But I remember from the get-go, what has really distanced me from the pressure of competition is you've always been my information guy. You know, my brain goes a million miles a minute because I don't like to focus on just one thing all the time. That's why I love to go talk to people on the track, and just because if I just am hammering it out, I'm going to hammer it out until I'm finished, and you'll grind yourself down doing that. But you've always been feeding me information about other athletes.
Well, I look at myself as your tail gunner.
Yeah, exactly. You're always
ain't nobody going to sneak up on us because I'm watching. I'm watching, and I'm just paying attention to the stuff that we're not doing that we need to be doing. You can get focused on this, and this, and I can see one little hole, and I'm like, you know what? We need to work. We need to put some mortar in here, and we need to get this part of the wall better.
There's a bulwark you have to put up.
I'm just saying that, and I also said, earlier when we were talking, I said, every elite athlete needs somebody who can say anything to them. And for you,
people don't want that.
I know, but for you, I've always been that person where, people wouldn't dare say X, Y, or Z to you. I'd say it in a heartbeat if you needed to hear it because it'll make you a better person or a better athlete or whatever.
There certainly was a time where people stopped and started tiptoeing around you, and you kind of roll with it, and it's not something that I get ever in a place like Oxford, Mississippi, but I certainly don't get it from you.
Well, I'm just saying that if you read your press clippings, you're going to miss something because they only write, usually they only write the best. They write the highlights, and they don't know the struggle, and I do. So I want to make sure that we do those things that will help us to not struggle.
Try hard not to be too sexy of a story because then something weird's happening.
Well, the steak and potatoes.
And
potatoes of the pole vault. Let somebody else be the filet mignon. We'll be the medium rare prime rib.
I remember in 2015, every practice was 2014, 2015. So it was either interview questions I might get for as an officer or how to relate to other officers, or it was what kind of interview questions you're going to get in the press conference. I just remember he just kept asking me all the different stuff from a different way all the time. And I realized that then was some of the greatest training I ever went through is how do I first entertain my own mortality, and I've got plenty of broken bones and stitches to entertain my own mortality. And then you have to entertain your own image. You can't fall in love with your own image in this sport, or else you'll eventually just fall.
Well, one of the things...
It'll cripple you.
one of the things that when I was coaching, and we had a lot of success at the high school level coaching, one of the things that I learned and that I tried to pass on to you was it never hurts you to give credit away.
Yeah.
And so when you can share, you may win a Diamond League meet, but if you can share some of that with your friends, especially, they didn't have their best day, but you got to let them know that they're still your guy. Yeah. They're still your guy.
And I like being at that spot. I like being at that spot. It allows me to. Everybody, even if when I had a bad day, it's awesome when people come up to you and you just never expect it, but they say, "Hey, I know you had a rough one. We'll get him next time." And I was the first one to say that to him years ago because you told me to say it to him. Yeah. And now it's all coming together. It's a whole culture shift in the last 6 years in professional pole vaulting. It's not occasionally; it's all the time, and that is.
Yeah, it's cool. Nice. It's nice that it's fun to go out and compete with these guys because
it's hard to leave home sometimes.
It is, and you gotta. These are the guys you live your life among when you're out on the road, and the cool thing is that some of them aren't even in your event because you got Krauser and you got Walsh and you got all these guys who are so fun to be around, and you get to see them all the time. This one may not be at this meet. And all of your vaulter friends may not be there, but you'll see them at the next one.
We always rendezvous at lunch. It seems like lunch is from 11:30 to 3:30. So we all just. I remember in Lausanne sitting around the dining room table with Ryan Krauser all day one day. We woke up, we started eating at 8. He was gonna eat until lunch, and that's his least favorite thing to do in the whole world is eat, and he's got to do it all the dang time. And I just sat around the meal hall with him all day. I was drinking tea, and he was just going to get another plate. And they had the best spread in Lausanne. And then by the time it turned 4 o'clock, we went out to the track to get a training session. We came back to the meal hall. We watched the meet from last year, and we just kept eating. I remember that. That was a ton of fun, sitting there with Krauser all day. And everybody else, there would be a different crowd at the table every hour. I'd be drinking coffee or tea, and he'd just be eating. I just remember that, and he just looked so miserable.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you, one of the, those days going to the Diamond League meets is really special that you get pulled in.
I hope they don't end. I hope they don't end soon anyway.
Well, you get pulled in to some pretty cool places around with some pretty darn cool people, and that's a really, really neat thing because most of them are just so normal. Some are not.
Some are not.
But we're really, really normal people like us. But like at Rio. And you remember I stayed at the training venue all day, every day, because I was so far from the village. I was so far from the Olympics. You couldn't get a ticket to anything. You couldn't get there. It was just such... Only thing I did was I hung out at the U.S. training
Escola Naval. That was pretty sweet.
Escola Naval. It was an awesome place to hang out. I didn't see much Olympics in live. I saw it on the big screen there at the training center. But it was a cool place to hang out every day. And so you came for a massage like at the end of the day, but I got to be there all day long, and I got to walk around and watch all these athletes go through various training sessions that they were doing. I watched Krauser. He was throwing I thought he was throwing a light shot. He wasn't throwing a light shot. I'm like, how light is that shot? It was, no, that's regulation. That's the shot. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's heaving that thing. But I got to meet all these people. I'm watching them work out. I get to sit there, and it's okay. They let you ask, if you want to ask a question, they'll entertain your question. And I learned a ton. And then you get to go right across the track and sit down and have lunch with them. Mm-hmm. And I got to meet so many people and learn a lot in that week that we were down there in Rio. And, it was kind of like, I wasn't at the Olympics. I was at the Olympic training venue, I got to see Olympics 2 nights. Pole vault prelim and pole vault final. And we got rained on like unbelievable the night of the final.
I remember coming back out of the hallway in Rio, and I think you had a beard. I'm like, what is he doing?
We all had beers. We all had
beers. There's some beer in here.
We were soaking wet. And all the coaches were sitting there wet and like, does anybody want a beer? And so we had no idea when y'all were coming back out again. So we all had a couple of beers. And I'm like, can't believe we're sitting at the Olympics in the rain drinking beer. But there was like nothing else to do, and we're like, this sucks so bad. We're definitely having a beer. and then the rain stopped, and y'all came out, and it got kind of fun again.
Yeah.
But then you know, like, you were there like 48 hours, and then off to Europe you went. And I was there for the medal ceremony the next day, and out of there I was.
Yeah,
you know, I said I got to get home and sleep in my own bed.
All right, that's enough of that.
All right.
Cool, thank you.
All right.